The United Auto Workers has begun negotiations with the three Detroit auto companies for a new contract. The old contracts with GM, Ford, and Stellantis, formerly Chrysler, expire on September 14th. We're sitting down here today with David Green, Director of UAW Region 2B, which covers Ohio and Indiana, to learn more about what's going on. Before he was regional director, Dave was president of the UAW local in Lordstown 1112 before that plant closed, and worked in Bedford, Indiana, and was just elected director of the region last year. So thanks very much again, Dave, for joining us today. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about where we are now. What kind of background is there to this negotiation, so we can get into what is it that the UAW really feels your members need?
So, for the last 20 plus years, we've been really having a lot of concessionary contracts. And the reason this is so important for folks who aren't part of the big three, because as our contracts and wages have gone up, as we've gotten gains, so all ships in the harbor have risen as well. Other industries, organizations, companies would have to pay their workers more money as well. As we've seen concessionary agreements over the last couple decades, so has a lot of other folks in different areas, sectors, regions, not necessarily just in the auto industry, right? I mean, the UAW has a long history of bargaining great contracts, and in those contracts, people in other industries would also get raises as well. So what we're fighting here for is our members at the big three, our members in the IPS parts department, and the people who are not our members, who work at non-unionized plants. If we end up getting wage increases and better benefits, those employees will too, because the company knows if they don't raise the expectations for those workers, then they're going to go ahead and join the union. So that's one of the biggest anti-union campaigns out there, is always to give those who aren't in a union the same benefits or very similar to those who are in a union.
What kind of wage increases have you seen over the past 4 years compared to inflation or to what the CEOs at the auto companies are making? How does that fit to what you may be looking for now?
Yeah, so the CEOs making it close to 400 plus times what the average workers are making is just criminal, right? And we want them to make good money. We want the companies to prosper and make good money too. Our members just haven't received the justice that they've deserved over the years. In 2007, I was the president in Lordstown at Local 1714, going through a bankruptcy, and we had to do a lot of things, gave up a lot of things that our members, benefits that our members had, in order to save those companies. And the expectation was that we save those companies, right? We're going to take a haircut. They're taking a haircut, and hey, when it all starts growing back, we're all going to grow together. And that hasn't happened. CEO pay and executive pay has skyrocketed. Our members' pay has stayed stagnant. Even with the 3% wage increases, has not kept up with inflation. We've given up cost of living. We implemented these 2 tiers inside of our facilities, which just has created a lot of division. So I think the pay has not kept up. We've got a lot of members who are leaving, right? Especially in the skilled trades departments in the big three. They'll go through an apprenticeship program. They're making 35, 36 bucks an hour inside the big three. They can go make 40, 50 bucks an hour on the outside. So they end up getting trained in a trade and then just leave. It's unheard of. And the production folks to come in, work as a temp for 2 years, 15, 16, even 17 bucks an hour, with the hope of getting hired maybe a few years down the road. And then, you're talking years to get to full wage. These people are going to work over a decade before they can get to full rate. And it's just not fair to those workers or their families. And so that's one of the big sticking points.
Explain this. I wanted to ask you about the different tiers and what's happened there and how you're hoping to change it.
Yeah, the big part of that is, when we've got folks working side by side in a facility that do not have the same benefits, are not making the same pay rate, it creates division. We knew that, but wanted to help the company survive. they've done extraordinarily well, record profits, as they like to say. And so, we want a record contract here. We believe that those workers working side by side at half the rate was intended to do more than save the company money. I think the company recognized that it would help create division inside of our organization, members that don't, they don't trust each other. Like, how come you're making more money than me? That really needs to end. We need to get everybody on the same page, to have the same benefits, the same pay rates, and all across the board. And unless we can do that this round, I think it's not going to be a positive sign for us.
Does that include the temps too? Or I know one of the objectives, or one of the goals in the list of priorities that have been set out, is to end abuse of temps. I don't know how, I'm sure there are an awful lot of temps, but are you looking to just end the use of temps, or how are you looking to correct that?
Yeah, I mean, the way that the temp system is today is not the way it was when I started. I started in 1989 as a summer helper, right? I worked my 89 days and they laid me off. And then they would call me back if they needed me, and I'd work another 89 days. And then, you come back later. There's always a need for summer help, for temporary workers who are truly temporary. But what this has turned into over the last at least decade is these temps have now become permanent employees, right? They're there all year for years, like 2 years before they're even, being able to be considered to be hired. It's unjust and it's unfair. So I think that's where we're trying to get out of that. Look, there's going to be some temporary workers. We recognize that's the industry, specifically around summer help, just like it had been for years and years. A lot of people want to take a summer vacation, and manufacturing doesn't run well without human hands spinning the wheel. So we recognize there's going to be a need, at least I do. But this abuse of the temp workforce, which has really become ignorant, in my personal opinion, really needs to stop. Zach, yeah.
I think one of the reasons that we were especially interested in talking with you, and that the interest in these negotiations is especially high, is because of the transition that's occurring in the auto industry with the move to electric vehicles, and the creation of or announcements of large numbers of battery plants, many of which I know are joint ventures between the auto companies and others. And we have one, of course, right here in Lordstown that you've organized, which we're really happy to see that that's happened. We also know that the people in those plants are not being paid UAW master contract wages. So I'm interested in getting a better sense for what you'd like to see the contract do for the Lordstown battery plant, but for the battery plants in general, and even more broadly, what do you want to see as the industry makes these investments? What's the worker take on this?
Well, look, the batteries are the drivetrains of the future, right? I mean, if we're transitioning from ICE or internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, the engine, the transmission, the exhaust system, all these ICE parts will end up going away, and the battery is going to be that drivetrain for the vehicle. We believe that our members, right, who've been building cars forever, should be part of that drivetrain transition, right? The last thing we want to do is transition into EV, or see the companies transition, excuse me, vehicles into the EV market, leaving our workers in the dust, where there's no workers left to transition into EV because they're all, if you're making transmissions and engines. Recognizing that production assembly for vehicles will probably be somewhat similar, although requires a lot less people, right? At least a third less is from all the statistics I've seen. So we want to make sure that our members have a just transition, that people who've been working in the industry for decades, or, even 10, 15 years, and are trying to get to that top rate, And then, this EV comes online and they get kicked out the door. That's not fair. That's not just. It's not right, smart, or fair. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And yeah, these folks at Altium, at $16.50 an hour is what they're coming in at. They got to work like 7 years to get up to $20. And it's, again, it's not right. It's not smart. It's not fair. And they're having an extremely high turnover rate because you could go make that kind of money, flipping burgers. And not that that's super easy. There's dignity in that work too. But it's a lot less dangerous than mixing chemicals for lithium ion batteries.
I see that you have gotten some support on this from most of the Sherrod Brown and most of the Democratic senators. I see I'd quote a sentence from them where they say it's unacceptable and a national disgrace that the starting wage at any current American joint venture electric vehicle battery facility is $16 an hour. And I see also that President Biden made a statement, while it wasn't quite that direct, he did say that he wanted the transition to a clean energy future, that's fair, and look to retool, reboot, and rehire in the same factories and communities as at comparable wages while giving existing workers the first shot to fill all those jobs. And it would seem as if this is especially important here in Ohio, where we have, engine and transmission plants. I don't know if we're number 2 to Michigan, but we're right up there. I know with workers who are likely to be affected, as you've described. So I don't know if there's more to say about that beyond what you already have, or if you think there's a possibility you could get an agreement at Altium, even if it isn't part of the master agreement. But the idea, I'm sure, would be to get an overall agreement covering all of these plants, like the Ford one in Marshall, Michigan, and all of these others that have been announced.
Yeah, and it's at the independent part suppliers. So, part of it is big 3 for sure, but we've identified just in Region 2B, which is Ohio and Indiana, some 5,000 jobs that will possibly be eliminated. People who make mufflers, right? 12-volt batteries. There's certain things that are being produced for the automotive industry that won't be needed when an EV comes online, right? Those are those components. So our research department has been working with us trying to identify those specific locations. I would love to have conversations with the owners of those locations to try to get some government money on transitioning into a different product moving forward. Just because the parts that you're making today aren't going to be viable tomorrow, don't mean you can't start looking towards the future. There's government money out there. Look, the battery manufacturing facilities are getting billions of dollars to transition into this new technology. And that's great, right? But those workers should be getting their fair share too. And then it's not just getting your fair share, but we're really trying to focus on making sure our members aren't left in the cold as this transition happens.
It would, I think, you're making a good point here too, that there's a great deal of government support going to help this happen, whether it's through loans to the companies, whether it's through credits to car buyers, whether it's for infrastructure to create charging stations, you name it. We got many billions of dollars being spent, our money, to help create that. And so if we're going to spend all of this money on helping that happen, then we should make sure that the workers who are affected are, not left out in the cold, as you say. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're looking for in the way of job security in this new agreement.
Yeah, just being able to strike over plant closures. I think that's an important piece. And look, I've gone through a plant closure, right? I was in Lordstown when, we were first unallocated, which the company used a different language that was in our contract really to skirt their contractual obligations to the employees. We're still fighting to get made whole from that ordeal. There was a case, part of that has gone to arbitration, and our members are still waiting to be made whole from 2019. It's very frustrating that can't happen or hasn't happened up to this point. So being able to strike over plant closures, I think, is an important part of what we're looking for here. and just having that job security. And, I know the companies are going to say, well, you have to earn it. Well, we have earned it, right? And make no mistake, when our members, after you work so many years in manufacturing like this, you end up sore and broken knees, broken backs, bad shoulders, carpal tunnel. I mean, these jobs take a toll on our health. So making sure that we can protect those jobs, that those plants are going to stay open through the life of the agreement, which is generally what we've done in the past, is extremely important, and not let these companies just go ahead and close them mid-agreement when they've already agreed not to close any facilities, and they close them anyway.
There's also something that's referred to as the Working Family Protection Program. What is that exactly? What would that be?
Yeah, so I don't know if you ever heard of the Jobs Bank. So
Oh, yeah.
it was a controversial issue where, if you're going to put all these people off, you're going to put them in people thought, well, they just put you in a room and paid you. What they should be doing is then letting those workers go out to the community and work at United Way, work at some charity, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and then they can spend their time serving in their communities, which is, a lot of our members do this voluntarily anyway. We've been huge advocates. I think the entire UAW and the whole organization of the UAW has really put a premium. It's not just fighting for workers' rights, but it's social justice and fighting and helping people in our community. And so, we'd like to see that. We'd like to see that return.
I think one other area that I wanted to at least touch on is retirees, what you're looking for there, whether it's in pay or benefits or what have you.
And I think it's both. Look, our retirees haven't seen our pensions haven't seen any increase in like 20 years. Our retirees used to get some Christmas bonus and some extra monies, and then through bankruptcy lost all that. And so it's really difficult for folks once they retire. Now, I recognize it's retirement. You got to save your money, have a pension, you get what you have. But these companies are making record profits, the people who made them those record profits deserve a little bit of something. And so the retirees are very important in this negotiations. We've talked a lot about it over the last year leading up to this, and we want to make sure that they get a piece of that pie because they've earned it, they deserve it, and it's the right thing to do.
So we've already begun to see this, but there obviously will be critics who say that these demands are unrealistic, that the companies won't be able to compete, et cetera, et cetera. What do you say to those folks?
I think they're wrong, right? I think if the company, when the company was struggling, we're willing to give up. If they're making record profits, we want a piece of it. I don't think that's too much to ask. And if the companies start, falling behind, then they come back to the table like they always have. And we'll make those sacrifices like we always have. But it can't be a one-way street here, Zach, right? I mean, you can't expect the workers to stay stagnant and not move when the company's profits are continually going up. We really need to try to get on par. So as the company does very well, we expect the employees to be treated very well. If the company's struggling, as we have in the past, Zach, we'll go back to the table and work on that. But right now, things are good for them and not so good for our members.
So what can people who are sympathetic to the union do? Is there anything, or even if there's much they can do, how would people best follow what's going on other than just, reading the news as it is? How would you do that if you want to know?
Well, there are different links at uaw.org, which is the international union website, on each of the big three, Ford, Chrysler, Stellantis, and GM links, so they can go and kind of see what's going on. And I guess if we end up going out on strike, that we get support from the community. That's all. Because the reality is the wages that we get, like I said at the beginning here, that spills over to other industries, other sectors. So what we're doing out there, fighting for better wages, and fair work agreements is something that will really benefit all workers if we're successful. And just so they know, like, cost of living is important to us as well this time around, because we've seen what happened with inflation. This is something that I think all employers should have attached to workers' wages and benefits, because you just can't expect your employees, if they're making a specific wage, to eat all the cost of inflation, especially when things go south in our economy. And those people need to be protected. I mean, unless we want to give them more government money because they can't pay their bills and let people go bankrupt, that's not acceptable, Zach. So finding some cost of living adjustment so working families can have dignity in their work and make a fair, equitable pay in good times. And look, cost of living adjustments, if the rate of inflation goes down, then they take money out of your paycheck. We're fine with that. Okay. When things go that way, then we go that way. But when everything's moving up, we expect to rise with the tide.